Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Debrief on ABC News Live. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Thanks so much for joining us. We're giving you updates on that unbelievable crash in Alaska where two airplanes collided in midair. Plus, if you can believe it, Democrat candidate number 22 has officially entered the race. And have you ever wondered what's on the bottom of the ocean floor? Well, we're talking to the man who found out. But first, here are your headlines.
Saudi Arabia now says days after two of its oil tankers were sabotaged, Saudi Arabia now says someone used drones to attack its oil pipelines. Rebels in Yemen are claiming responsibility.
Former President Jimmy Carter is recovering after surgery for a broken hip. The 94-year-old fell in his Georgia home before going out to hunt turkeys. Carter said he was hoping to repeat last month's success. Look at him all decked out there, but he is reportedly in good spirits.
A judge in Oakland, California, has awarded a husband and wife in their 70s more than $2 billion in damages, finding that Monsanto's Roundup weed killer caused the couple's cancer. It's the third such jury verdict against Monsanto. Parent company Bayer says it's disappointed with the decision and will appeal.
If you use WhatsApp and if you use the voice calling feature of the app, then you may have been at risk of being hacked. The Financial Times says a group of Israeli hackers took advantage of a flaw to remotely hijack dozens of phones.
We begin with an unbelievable nightmare in the air. Two planes collided while in flight over Alaska, leaving 4 people dead, 2 people missing, and 10 others hospitalized. I want to go to Will Carr, who's in Anchorage, with more. Will?
Good morning, Kimberly. Crews are searching some rough and rugged terrain outside of Ketchikan right now after 2 float planes collided in midair on Monday. That crash killed at least 4, it sent 10 to the hospital, and left a massive debris field. All of the people on both of the planes, except for the pilots, were actually on a cruise that started in Vancouver. It was a 7-day vacation. They came to Alaska to enjoy the state's beauty, and that's what they were doing from the air when something went tragically wrong. Princess Cruises tells us, quote, "We are incredibly distressed by this situation, and our thoughts and prayers are with those on board the planes and their families." One of the companies involved is Taquan Air. They're known for their adventure flights across Alaska's cascading frontier. Just last year, Taquan Air actually had a crash. One of their planes crashed into a jagged mountain. The Coast Guard had to sweep in and make a dramatic rescue. Nobody was killed, amazingly, in that crash, but after the latest crash on Monday, Taquan Air has suspended its operations. The NTSB has launched a GO team because the big question now is, why did this crash occur? That team is supposed to be on the ground sometime later today. And at the same time, a number of Good Samaritans are getting a lot of credit for jumping in and helping save some of those survivors right after the crash, and possibly have saved their lives. Kimberly.
Yes, a devastating story. Thank you, Will. Guys, on to Washington. The trade war in China is still top of mind for President Trump, with a series of tweets about it today. And this comes after China retaliated yesterday and announced higher tariffs on $60 billion worth of American goods. And that was in response to the U.S. raising tariffs on Chinese goods. So I want to bring in Karen Travers at the White House. Karen, I really don't think that we can ask this enough. And I think they were asking on your radio calls today, who will feel the brunt of these tariff wars?
Yeah, well, certainly you're looking at American companies who import parts or products from China that are going to see an increase in price on those products, because now the tax for them to bring them in from China will be higher, 10 to 25%, as we saw from the president last week. And, you know, some small business owners say that when they do that and they absorb that higher cost, they have to pass that along to their customers. So American consumers down the line could be paying for these new tariffs. Now, the president, Kimberly, continues to insist that it's this transfer of money from China to the U.S. Treasury and that China is paying for these tariffs. That's just not how this is playing out.
Yeah, and I just want to ask you, do you think Trump is playing the long game here? Like, do his actions now, will that improve how things are later?
You know, yesterday you saw the markets really take a deep dive. The Dow Jones was down more than 600 points at the end of the day. It was the worst day of the year except for January 3rd. So really a lot of concerns among investors here and overseas as to what is going to happen and whether or not this trade war is temporary, escalating, or indefinite. And it certainly seems like it could be indefinite. You know, they had hit the pause button late last year as negotiations were underway. But Kimberly, those negotiations have stalled. The next big thing we might be looking at is a meeting between President Trump and China's President Xi at the end of June, but there's no indication of high-level talks in between now and then. That could change, of course, but the president does believe that he has to take a tough position on China. He does have the backing of Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill on the broader policy of getting tough and fixing a trade imbalance, but it's the tactics that the president's using that is certainly raising concerns in Congress and, of course, on Wall Street.
Yeah, and I just want to mention the tweets that I said earlier. He tweeted this morning, he said about the escalating trade war, he said we're in a fantastic position. So I guess the question is, are we?
The president points out that the U.S. economy is strong. You know, there were good jobs numbers earlier this month. Things are humming along, and that's why the president very publicly and confidently will declare that the U.S. economy can handle this. And certainly senior officials say the same thing, that as they get tough on China, the U.S. economy is in good enough shape to handle any short-term bumps and bruises over the next couple of months. They say that China's economy, though, is not as good, and that slowdown will impact China more. And that's what's going to bring them to the negotiating table. You know, a potential slowdown in China's economy, though, Kimberly, may be small comfort to American farmers who are certainly feeling the effects of this trade tension and tit for tat, and American companies and consumers who are going to start to see higher prices on imports because of the tariffs.
All right, Karen Travers at the White House, thank you so much for joining us. And tensions continue to escalate with Iran. The New York Times reporting Acting Defense Secretary Shanahan presented an updated military plan last week. The plan could send as many as 120,000 troops to the Middle East if Iran attacks American forces. So I want to bring in Louis Martinez at the Pentagon. Louis, the report does say that the White House is divided on how to approach this, and they haven't officially commented on it, but is that troop number, is that a real plan, or is that just a scare tactic?
Well, Kimberly, we're trying to confirm this information from the New York Times because it is eye-catching, because it's the highest number that we've actually seen with regards to potential U.S. military presence in that region. But as the New York Times reported, this is a top-line number in case Iran attacks U.S. forces or in case they accelerate their enrichment program. But they also make the point that this is not an invasion force for Iran. So if anything, this would be in response to something that Iran does in terms of attacking U.S. military forces or enriching more uranium. But we reached out to the White House for comment. They are not confirming this. We reached out to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. All they said is that they do not comment on military operations or planning. You know, when we talk to military officials here, they tell us that this is what the military does. They build plans, they create plans for any potential situation. And in this case, it sounds like there were a range of options that were probably presented to the White House last week. And in terms of some of them smaller scale, some of them large scale, and it's possible that this was the largest scale, probably the worst case scenario. But where does the White House go like this? We know that John Bolton, who is a national security advisor, is a hawk on Iran. We know that he is very bullish on a strong U.S. military presence. That's why he was the one that announced last week that we are going to see an aircraft carrier strike group and as well as B-52 bombers heading to the region to deter Iran based on new intelligence that indicated that they were planning attacks against U.S. forces in Iraq, Syria, and at sea. But at the same time, I think there are other officials in the administration who are urging caution, probably because they don't want to see things escalate in the region. But again, this sounds to me like it's just a top-level plan for a worst-case scenario.
Yeah, and of course, this is coming after what we discussed yesterday, where 4 ships in the region were sabotaged over the weekend. Before we wrap up, any updates there?
Yeah, definitely, Kimberly. We're hearing from a U.S. official that an initial U.S. military assessment, the U.S. military team went over to assist the Emiratis in investigating what happened to those ships. The initial investigation has concluded that it was likely Iran or Iran's allies that carried out an attack by placing explosive charges along the sides of those ships at or near the waterline that led to gashes maybe 5 to 10 feet across. None of those ships were severely damaged, but obviously the indication that if Iran did this, it's going to, what does that mean in terms of ramping up the situation there? I think you're probably going to need and see more U.S. intelligence needed to get a clearer picture of what exactly happened.
All right, Louis Martinez at the Pentagon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
And just when you thought there was one too many Democratic candidates entering the 2020 race, there's one more, Montana Governor Steve Bullock. So I want to bring in ABC News political director Rick Klein in our D.C. bureau with more details. Can you tell us a little bit about this guy?
Yeah, the governor of Montana is making a play to be known as the guy that won in the red state. He won re-election in 2016. The same time President Trump won his state of Montana by 20 points, he won by about 4 points, his re-election race. And that is his calling card, that he knows how to go into Trump country and win. He doesn't think it's too late, although it's going to be hard to make a splash in a field this big, 22 candidates and counting.
All right, Rick. So as our political director, we know if anybody is keeping up with all of these candidates, it's you. So guess what it's time for? You know? It's time for Stump Rick Klein. So Rick, I want you to name all 2020 of the 22 candidates in this race. We're removing your feed so only the viewers and I can see the answers. So whenever you're ready, give it a go.
All right, Bullock, Castro, Sanders, Warren, Buttigieg, Harris, Delaney, Klobuchar. I'm going in random order here, so I'm kind of going all over the map here.
Yes, you are.
Booker, Wayne Messam, Elizabeth Warren, Seth Moulton, Eric Swalwell. What do we have here? Well, the guy on The View right now, Beto O'Rourke. How many do I got so far? You keeping track? Do I have
you have about 10 or 11. Keep going.
Oh, 10 or 11. Did I get Kamala Harris yet? Did I get Bernie Sanders yet? Did I get Joe Biden yet? Kirsten Gillibrand.
Yes.
What do we have? How many do we have left? Andrew Yang. Gonna have a big event in New York tonight, as a matter of fact.
Got him. Yeah.
We're gonna go with Tulsi Gabbard as to add to our list.
Very good. You have about 4 more. 4 or 5 more.
4 or 5 more.
Yep, 5 more.
That's intimidating. I think I'm about tapped out.
All right. These
Who'd
are
I miss?
that's impressive, I must say. Did you say John Delaney? I don't remember you saying
I did.
John.
I got Delaney.
Okay, you got Delaney. Did you say Tim Ryan?
Did not get Tim Ryan.
You did not say Tim Ryan. Did you say John Hickenlooper?
Ooh, good one on that.
Hickenlooper.
Yes. I missed Jay Inslee too. As long as we're talking governors.
You missed Jay.
Yes.
And did you say Beto?
I did. I got Beto. He's on
Okay.
The View as we speak.
All right. So that was pretty
I got to
awesome.
study for this question next time. This is the second time I've gotten stumped on this. You think I learned my lesson?
Okay, well, the next time, honestly, to be honest with you, we were trying to make it harder. We were going to have you say them in the order that they entered, but that's for next time. So study up. Study up. All right, Rick, thank you so much for playing along.
Sure, thank you.
All right. Actions speak louder than words, right? Well, we keep saying it's spring, but the reality is it's cold, wet, rainy, snowing in most of the country. So I want to go to Ginger Z with a proper national forecast. Ginger?
Kimberly, thank you. I want to go ahead and show you some of the video in this nor'easter and then the next storm coming in. Reedsboro, Vermont, that would be snow, yes. 3.3 inches, at least where they are. Some places even more than that. Obviously, I am in a winter coat, and it's May 14th, so we're certainly seeing a very chilly and damp end to this storm. But we'll eventually be drying out. What we have to look at next is the West Coast. There's a powerful storm that's going to make the San Francisco Bay Area end up with so much rain that they could be seeing even months of rain, especially for this late in the season, in just a couple of days. Up in the Sierra, up to 1.5 feet of snow possible, and that is the same storm that's going to evolve into a severe weather outbreak. So right now we have it for Friday, just a kind of general region to watch for. This is just an early heads up for anybody that lives right there in the highlighted region. You have to be on alert and have your be weather aware, I will say for now, but we'll have more details as this gets closer. Kimberly?
All right, Ginger, thank you so much. And an update on a terrifying story on the Appalachian Trail. Chilling new details surfacing on how a man allegedly attacked a pair of hikers with a machete while they were hiking in Virginia. So I want to go to Stephanie Ramos in Bluemont, Virginia with more. Stephanie?
This path here leads to the Appalachian Trail here in Virginia, and for the last couple of weeks, hikers along this same trail have warned each other about another hiker who has threatened them. This latest encounter with that man, 30-year-old James Jordan, has turned deadly. Jordan made his first court appearance Monday, charged with attacking hikers and killing a man along the Appalachian Trail in Southwest Virginia. According to the federal complaint, Jordan, who lives in Massachusetts, approached a random group of hikers along the trail, threatening to pour gasoline on their tents and burn them to death. Scared for their lives, the 4 hikers decided to leave the campsite, and that's when police say Jordan pulled out a large knife, chasing 2 of the hikers, who later called 911. Authorities say when Jordan returned to the campsite, he started arguing with the other 2 hikers, fatally stabbing a man and seriously injuring a woman. The man managing to send an SOS signal on his phone before dying. Jordan has been arrested before for threatening hikers along this same path, most recently in Tennessee, but no one pressed charges, so police placed Jordan on probation and then later released him, which is now raising the question, could all of this have been prevented? Jordan is now facing murder charges and assault charges, and he will also undergo a mental evaluation. Kimberly?
All right, Stephanie, thank you so much. Pretty scary. Guys, we all have goals, right? But there are a few of us on this planet that truly live a life beyond one's imagination and explore all the corners of the earth. You're in for a treat because I'm joined by Victor Vescovo. You're the only person to ever summit the highest mountain on every continent. And once you finish a dive in August, you're also going to be the only person to go to the lowest point of each ocean. That's just incredible. I have to let that, just sink in for a second. Every mountaintop, every valley in the ocean, pretty incredible. How does it feel to go where no human has gone before?
It feels great. I just feel very privileged that I've been able to work with a lot of great adventurers and people that taught me how to climb, and then worked with a great team that built a submersible that we've now been able to take to the bottom of hopefully all 5 of the world's oceans. And we just came from the deepest one, in the Pacific Ocean, the Challenger Deep. And we're very happy that it was a success.
You're so chill about it. Like, I can't even believe I'm talking to you. How do you decide that you're going to do this?
Yeah, it was interesting. I climbed mountains for about 20 years and eventually got up Everest and did all that. And I was looking for another challenge.
You eventually got up Everest.
Yeah.
We'll repeat that. You eventually got up Mount Everest,
Yeah.
which is very dangerous if people have seen the movie.
Well, it took 2 tries. The first time I tried, I got about halfway up, got frostbite, had to come back down, and went back 2 years later and was able to get to the summit. But after I finished that and some other climbs, I was looking for a different challenge. And I was in the Navy for 20 years in the reserves and really had an attachment to the sea. I thought, well, it might be symmetrical to, instead of going up, to go down. And I was absolutely shocked to discover in 2015 that no human had ever been to the bottom of 4 of the world's oceans. And yet the technology seemed to exist to be able to do it. So I did some research and said, what would it take? And what would you have to get done to make that happen? And so I put a team together, and over the last 4 years, we designed and built a submersible that could repeatedly go to the bottom of any ocean.
Wow.
And over the last year, we've been executing that mission. We've been to the bottom of 4 of the world's 5 oceans, and we just have 1 more to go.
And what's the one that you have left?
The one that we have left is actually the shallowest. It's the one in the Arctic Ocean, and we had to wait to do that one because the weather is so terrible there. We can pretty much only do it in August, so that's when we're going to hopefully complete the mission.
And I think one of the things that's really fascinating, and one of our producers wrote an article about this just yesterday, is that when you went to the bottom of one of these oceans, you found something pretty surprising, right?
Right. Unfortunately, what we have found at many of the deep ocean locations is contamination by man. We have found wonderful things. We found new species. We have found wonderful things for the scientific community. But, there are billions of people on this earth, and we consume a lot, and unfortunately a lot of that does find its way into the deep oceans. And the currents and everything else, it eventually moves that into the lowest points. And so it is unfortunate, but we are documenting. What I think a lot of people already know is that, mankind is contaminating, 70% of our planet into the oceans.
I just have to ask you, scariest moment out of all of this? You know, when you look back at your journey, I mean, what was the most frightening?
I must confess, this is a prototype submersible, and when we first designed it and built it, we had to test it, and we had to test it in real conditions. So at about 15,000 feet in the Bahamas, my co-pilot and I were testing different systems, and we smelled something that wasn't quite right. And so we had an electrical problem, and we were about an hour and a half from the surface. So we addressed the problem, we dealt with it, we found out a weakness in the design, and we later, got it taken care of. But yeah, it was a little bit tense there for a little bit when you're that far from the surface and you're completely enclosed in a 1.5 meter sphere. So.
And what's next before we wrap up? You said the Arctic Ocean.
You're right. We're going to go to the Malloy Deep in the Arctic Ocean in August and hopefully wrap up the expedition by taking the ship into London and presenting at the Royal Geographic Society. And then hopefully after that, look for a new adventure. Everybody keeps suggesting if I've done this, I should probably go into space. And that sounds kind of fun.
Right? That's all that's next. You have to go up there to the moon.
Sure. Yeah.
Victor, incredible work. Very honored to be sitting with you right now. It's just really, really awesome. So thanks for being with us today.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yes. And guys, as you know, we've been staying focused on Mental Health Awareness Month, whether it be debilitating depression or anxiety or your everyday stress. We're trying to normalize talking about these issues, and talking about it can quite literally be anywhere if you wanted to, including the sidewalk. So I want to bring in Tracy Rubel, who is the executive director and founder of Sidewalk Talk. Tracy, I just want you to tell me a little bit more about this, because you're kind of doing something where it's making people, making therapy accessible to everyone. Tell me about it.
Well, hi, Kimberly. Thanks for having us on. I really fundamentally believe there aren't enough therapists actually in the world to heal what's going on in our society. And if we all got better at listening to one another and growing the capacity to hear each other, what would actually happen is we'd create a culture where maybe we wouldn't have as many mental health issues.
Yeah, and you were talking to our producer a lot about this, how mental health is beyond your normal self-care. When people think of self-care, they may think of just the basics like a massage, having a spa day. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so what's been happening increasingly is that we're living busier lives where we're not connecting with one another, and with us all using our phones, we forget to prize really meaningful human connection. And what we know is that the brain actually is driven to want to connect, and it's part of what makes us healthy and well. But guess what? We don't do that very much anymore. In fact, we don't even know how. And we sort of think that using social media, which I sometimes refer to as kind of cheap relating, I think, as some of your producers had said, or fast food relating, fits the bill, but it doesn't. It doesn't actually make us mentally well.
Yeah, and why do you think sustaining mental health is so difficult, especially in the society we live in?
I think the number one reason is that we all live busier lives. We're all hustling to earn a living at this point, and we have less time to connect. We have less time to take care of ourselves. We're not sleeping well. We're not eating well. But fundamentally, we know that loneliness is a health epidemic that not only directly impacts our mental health, but it impacts our physical health too. And we actually live a shorter life if we're not connecting with one another.
So just getting back to these images that we're looking at, I just find them so incredibly amazing, just that people are sitting in public on the side of the street. Have you found that people are just willing to divulge personal information just right there in public?
Yeah, it's been amazing how much more comfortable we feel talking to a stranger sometimes than people that we know, because there's no preconceived notion about us, and people feel really, really safe to just sit down and unload and then say, gosh, I feel after a 10-minute, 15-minute conversation so much lighter. And now I can go on my way and maybe carry it forward to the next person that I'm going to listen to, which makes me so excited, the ripple effects of this.
I really love that. And for someone who is not in one of the 40 cities where Sidewalk Talk is in, what can they do? What do you recommend?
So, couple things. You can join our community because we do some online listening with one another. But I actually think that anybody who's interested should start a chapter. I'm hoping that when people see us out there on the sidewalks, what it does is it visibly inspires people to listen better in their own homes. But if you can't get involved with us, get involved with a club or organization where you're repeatedly meeting the same people week after week, because that continuity of connection over and over again is really what starts to make us feel well inside. Having a place of belonging is so, so important for our mental health.
Well, Tracy, we appreciate what you're doing. I'm glad that it is in 40 cities. It's incredible, and I'm definitely going to look for your team here in New York. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot for having us on, Kimberly. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much. And guys, before we go, West Point Military Academy is preparing to make history this year. The largest class of black women, 32 to be exact, are graduating later this month. A reminder, West Point was founded in 1802 and did not graduate a black cadet until 1877, do the math. And the first black captain was not named until 1979. And now 32 black women, so congratulations, a big congratulations. All right, my friends, continue to take care of yourselves. And if you're around, you can stick around for the briefing room at 3:30 p.m. And then you can check us out for World News Prime at 8 p.m. And if you want to stay updated on all of these headlines, you can go to abcnews.com or download the app. I'm Kimberly Brooks, and I'll see you tomorrow.